welcome to the walkthrough of the Betty Squarespace template. This template or this walkthrough is actually meant to go into quite a lot of detail. So after you've purchased the template, you won't have hopefully too many questions. If you do, you're always welcome to reach out to me. I'm happy to help you, but I really wanted to be able to go through each of the sections with you. First off, I'm just going to talk about some highlights of this template. I'm sure you've already gone through the live demo yourself, so you've already kind of poked around to see what was out there. But, on this template, I've customized a blog, a shop, so you like your store, whatever you want to add in there to whatever you're selling. And also a member area. So you can see down here, I have this floating button that's kind of fun for a community login. You can call this whatever you want. And everything in here is totally customizable. So if you don't have anything that you're selling, you just have a member login, you can add, delete, update, custom. You can seriously do anything that you want in here. So we'll go over that as well. I also wanted to kind of point out some of the custom CSS in here that makes this template really unique and really fun. So that way you can stand out. I get really tired of seeing all of these websites that end up just looking exactly alike. So I try to add things in here that, make it really unique so that your clients, your customers, whoever's coming to your site will really remember you so you can stand out. Okay, so when you first come in here to your dashboard and you open up the website, you're actually going to see some pop-ups come up with some video tutorials that Squarespace has embedded in there. So I really highly suggest that you go through those tutorials if you're not familiar with Squarespace. Just take the time to review everything. It's going to be very helpful. And then what you're going to do after you've done that, I'm going to start going through more of the boring stuff, I guess you could say. So we're going to start with the settings panel over here. So let's go into settings. Over here, you're going to see like your site availability. So you can set it. I have right now it's password protected. It's just demo to get in. You can also set it to private if you don't want anybody else to see it other than the people who are authorized to work on it. And then once you're ready to publish, you're going to put this on public mode and upgrade to publish. Just another thing in here, you have to poke and prod around in here to see what's relevant to you, but you can add your social links if you need any connected accounts, like if you're connecting Google or anything like that. There's all sorts of things that you can do in here. Permissions is going to give you a way to invite other people. So maybe you're not the only one who's working on this. You can add other people in your group, on your team, who's able to work on this. So this is something that you can go through. There's a lot of details in here, but the main ones is just when you get started is just like the site availability is what you really want to take note of. Out of that, let's go back. I want to show you the asset library. This is where you're going to keep all of your photos, anything that you want. You can see right now, these are all my demo folders, or files, excuse me. But what's really neat, and if you have all of your pictures ready to go, all of your images, all of your content, what I would suggest that you do is actually start by adding folders. Since this is just a demo, I just started uploading files kind of willy-nilly until it made sense within the template. But in true, what you should be doing is keeping things in folders. So, whatever makes sense for your template. So I suggest, if you have your images, go ahead and upload these here first. You don't have to. You can do it as you're going down each section. But honestly, I think it's a little bit easier when you do it that way. Another part in here is the marketing. So this is something that you're going to want to take note of and really go through. If you have email campaigns that you need to set up, one thing here that's going to be really important is the SEO appearance. So I highly suggest you take the time to learn about SEO and how you want this to display on Google. This you probably don't need to change. You can read more about it of what this actually means. You're going to want it enter an SEO site description. That's obviously high on the list. And then it, it gives you some more information in here. There's even a way to Google search keywords, so that's something you can look into. Let's see, you can, once we get back out of here, scheduling. Now, I didn't actually set up Acuity in here, but it's super easy to do. So if you do have a way that you want people to be able to schedule something with you, oh my gosh, it's so easy to get that added. Let's go into that. Give it just a second here. Okay, so when you set that up, if that is something that you need in this template, you'll be provided with this pop-up. You can go in here and add in, set up your calendar, clients, invoices, reports. There's so much that you can do to customize the appearance. I mean, it's super easy, but again, I don't actually have that set up in this template, so we're not going to touch on it too much, but I just wanted to make you aware of it in case it is something that you do need. It's super easy to get added. And then I'm going to come back up here to commerce. You can tell I'm kind of going out of order, mainly because the pages and the design section are the ones we're going to focus on the most. So I'm kind of getting like more of the admin stuff kind of out of the way first. So if we go into commerce, you can see here, this is a way that you can have a high-level overview of if you're selling products. You can see right here, this says products have been added because I did set up a store. You can set this up however you want. It can be a digital product. It can be a physical product. There's so many different ways to get that in there. If you set up a subscription, which I also have this set up in here, you just want to make sure that your subscription plan with Squarespace matches what you're able, because I think with Squarespace, I think it's the highest level plan if you want to sell subscriptions. So you just want to double check on that. But this is just where I just wanted to show you where you can manage everything. So you can see orders or inventory. These are just, some fake products that I have. I've called them workshops because when I created this template, I kind of had like a life coach in mind, but of course you can do this however you want. But then you can see here how you can manage other products in your store. It goes into membership. So there's all sorts of stuff that's in here. So I just wanted to make you aware of that. So let's get back out. We're going to go into what you're really here for, which is we're going to start with design. So when you go into design, you're going to see site styles, browser icon. I highly suggest you do upload your logo here or something, you can read more about that. But the browser icon is this right here. So this is the default Squarespace in here. I don't have one included in there, but I just wanted to make note in case you're not aware of what that is. So you can see, whatever the logo is on the tab. If you have a lock screen, so this is, instead of right now it just shows that it's just, this is all it is, but you're able to change the layout. This is if you're not ready to publish, but you want to be able to have people enter through a password or something like that. So you can set this up as well. And it's actually a good thing to do to set this for password protection. So that way, as you're going through and making changes, you can actually view your website on your mobile phone, because that's, how most people are viewing websites anyway. It's going to be on mobile. So you're going to be able to want to take your actual phone and log in and see what it looks like there. So with that being said, Squarespace does have this mobile view here. So you can click on that and see what it looks like in mobile. And that totally works. And you're going to use this actually to go through and make changes on mobile. But from a testing perspective, before you go live, I highly, highly, highly suggest that you do not rely on this view, and that while you're making changes in this mobile view that we see here, that you're also testing the changes on your actual mobile device, because sometimes there's a slight difference. It's not much. They do a really good job, but I have caught it a couple times where there's just a slight difference. And so you just want to make sure that everything looks good there. So let's see. If you have a checkout page, you can customize it here. If you want to customize your 404 page to say something, unique or different. The access denied screen, that's going to come into play when members are going to, actually here, we're in mobile view. So when they click this community login button, it's not going to work I can't show you right this second because of we're in the configuration right now of Squarespace, but you'll be able to see that later on. But when you click on here and you haven't actually logged in yet, you're going to get the access denied screen, and that screen is actually going to look like this. So that's why I couldn't click on the button to show you, but I can click on here and it's going to say, welcome to our community. This page is for members only. And from here, you're going to be able to join and sign in. And again, this is going to look different when you're on a real device. So it looks a little, this is what I'm talking about. Sometimes it looks a little different when you're in the mobile view, but when you actually pull it up on your phone, it works a lot better. And sometimes you just need some very slight adjustments. But you can change your headline here, change the description, show a join button. So you probably want to do that. All right. We also have a social sharing link you can take a look at. When you click on custom CSS, you can see all the custom CSS that's in here. I'm going to have that separate because it's too much to go through right now. So if you're familiar with CSS, this is going to be super easy for you to read. I tried to highlight everything with these comments. So these are all the variables, here's your fonts, header. So I've tried to break this up into sections. I'm not going to go through the whole thing right now, but it should be pretty easy to read. If you've never read CSS before, you know what? You don't even need to touch it. This is only if you want to make changes to it. So it shouldn't be a big deal at all. And if you have questions, again, you can reach out. So let's go back. And then the next thing, I didn't mean to go all the way back. So site styles, this is where you're going to see all of your site styles. So there's fonts. There's one thing I want to show you with the fonts. You can set your headings, your paragraphs. If you want different fonts for your buttons or, you can go into miscellaneous, you can do that as well. The headings, even though it says Eberl Fatface, that's what I have set it at, but I'm overriding it in this custom CSS. So this font that you see here with all of the headings is not defaulted in Squarespace. So that's something that I added separate. But if you want to take it out, if you want to change something, I'm going to show you how to take it out. But that's, again, going to be a little bit different. We'll do a whole section just on the CSS. But also in site styles, that's when you're going to come in here and show the color palette. This is the color palette I have. You can actually choose 5 colors. You can see here that I have the darkest colors. I've actually made the same. I've added like a nice pink in here. If you want, I don't have it in the template, but if you ever want to come in here and add a section, that's kind of like an accent color, you're absolutely able to do that. For the most part, I've just used this light theme, and really that's the only one I've used because I really like the uniformity of it. There's not a whole lot of difference between light 1, light 2, lightest 1, light 2. They're all pretty much the same. But I wanted to point out, like, if you did want a splash of color somewhere to highlight, this is where you can do it. You can even edit palette. You can come in here, make sure, whatever color you want to change, and that's where you're going to change that here. So if we can get out of colors, you can also set animations. So if you want, like, as you're scrolling down the page, I'm probably going to have this either like fade in or scale up. I think that looks a lot of fun. But that's something that you can play around with. Let's actually just click one right now. Sometimes it takes a second. So you can see what's happening. And then as you scroll down the page, you can see the animations that happen there. So you can also change spacing and buttons. So this is a primary button here, and you'll be able to see how to make changes to make it, if you don't want a primary button, Yeah, it even says this page doesn't have a secondary button, but you're able to add it. So once you go in, once we get to the point where you're making changes on the page, you'll be able to see, you know, maybe you want different buttons throughout. I don't suggest making different buttons though from a design perspective. You want to keep everything looking as uniform as possible. So the only time you're going to have maybe a special button is if you're really calling out something separate, which is totally doable. That's totally acceptable as well, but I just wanted to make note of that. So, okay, let's actually go back into desktop view. And this is now, actually before we go through how to make changes, let me show you one thing. Here, let's exit out of here because I didn't actually show you pages. I'm going to show you pages first. So in pages, this is where you're going to see the main navigation. You can see that everything is under main navigation is the same order that it is up here. We have a member area. So anything, I'm going to do a separate member area section, so I'll go real fast here. But anything that's under the member area would be behind the login. And then we also have pages that are not linked. So I don't have the homepage link, so it's not showing up in the navigation. And the reason for that is that you don't really need it. Everybody knows that when you click on the site's logo or, you know, title, you get back to the homepage. So that's why I don't have it up here in the main navigation, because we don't really need it. But why don't we go ahead and go through how to make edits. So again, there's so many different tutorials out there. If you just Google, you know, how to make edits on Squarespace, you're going to find so many different things. So I might go kind of fast through here, but I do want to step through it in case you haven't seen Squarespace before. You can see, like, when you're in edit mode, every time my cursor moves and I move over a section, something different gets highlighted. So we can start with the edit site header. And under site title and logo, that's where you're going to add, this is your site title, or if you want to have a logo in here instead, you can add a logo in there. I highly suggest if you do add a logo, also keep the site title as well, even though the logo is going to override the site title, but for Google, for SEO purposes, you're going to want the site title in there as well. There's different elements. So this button right here, watch what happens when I turn it off. The community login that was down here went away. So that button is actually a part of the header, but I'm using custom CSS to drop it down to the bottom and make it float. So we're going to turn that back on. So you can see, and then you can also see, you can call it whatever you want. This is the name, and then this is the page that it's going to. If you want your social links to show up at the top, you can do that. When I turn that on, you can see an Instagram comes up. You can edit social links. So if you have, you know, Facebook or whatever else you want to put in here, you can add more, but I'm leaving those out for now. I also have a cart icon right here, as you can see. We can also easily turn that on and off. You know, again, if you don't have a shop, then that's something that, or anything that you're selling, that's something that you would want to turn off. And then you can style all sorts of other things in here. So right now I have under style, I have this set to gradient. So this is what's making this right here kind of the full, it's allowing the, you can see the grading up here at the top, but you can always change that. But you'll want to be careful. I'm not sure if every single one of these, like dynamic theme, there's different ones, like the solid. If you choose solid and you go back to that, I don't think this background image is going to shoot up the top. So you got to be careful with that. If you want that background image to shoot up the top, you're going to have to pay attention to which style you have. So again, I've chosen gradient. I think dynamic would work too. I'm not sure what happens with solid and theme in these areas. Let's actually just see. Gotta wait a minute. So yeah, theme isn't gonna work. I do think dynamic might work though. So, just pay attention if you're making changes to what's happening there. If you make a change, you don't like it, you can always undo it. There's an undo button here. Be real careful about that save and exit button. Also, something I'm going to point out real fast is this section here, having this background image pushed over to the side is a part of the custom CSS. So you have to be sure that if you want this, you're not going to necessarily be able to replicate it super easily on another page. It's totally doable. We're going to cover that though in the separate CSS section, just so you know, because you have to grab, if you know anything about HTML and CSS, you have to grab the specific selector that's for this section. So you're not going to be able to replicate this and like duplicate this section and push it down the page and have the same effect. So that's not going to work. But again, I just want to make sure that you understand that when you come in here to edit this section, if you want it to look the same, you can select edit section to do things like change the background image. So this image you can change, but do not delete the actual section or try to replicate it and move it down, because that's not going to work. And it's because of the custom CSS selectors that's in it. So, but actually, yeah, so that's a good place to say. So when we can talk about how to edit. So I showed you the edit section. If you want to change the color, like maybe you want this to have a black background, you can choose one of these different ones up here. But I've chosen light, so we're just going to stay with that. Okay. You can, when you move over the text, you can see this text block that comes up. When you click into it, the pencil shows up, and so that's how you're going to be able to start editing. Same thing with this one down here. The button, I've set it to primary, but you can see there's other buttons that you can choose. If you don't want it all the way filled in, that's totally fine. I want to say too that when you're in edit mode, the hover effects don't necessarily work. You have to get out of edit mode for any hover effects to work. But then again, the pencil is what's going to allow you to edit it. And so there we go. And then moving down, we have this really fun scrolling text. So if you are hovering over this, you're going to see the blue outline is over the section part. So it says edit section. But if you want to edit the actual scrolling text, make sure you click into the scrolling text. And now you're going to see this pencil pop up because you want to be able to edit the scrolling text. And this is in here where you're going to be able, to change things, whatever your sayings are. You can add items, delete items, however you want to do it. In the design, we have a wavelength or wave width, so we can change that just to show you what's happening. It can be a little bit more fun if you want to make it a little bit more wavy. I'm going to put it back to medium. But if you also select the ellipsis, you can have a little bit more control. So you can slide this up and down, whatever makes sense to you. I'm just going to put it back to medium. Same thing with the text size. You can change it, do whatever you want. Selecting the ellipsis will allow this drop down, so you can change the text size. If you want it to change directions, have it go that way. You can change the speed. If you want it to pause when they hover, there's all sorts of things that when you get in here to play around, you can see. I'm just going to click out of this so we go back down to the next section. This is going to be the same way. Here's an image block. So when we click into that and we click on design, you can see Squarespace has built in all these really fun shapes. So you can choose from all these different shapes in here if you want. Okay, then I added a video because I thought that was really fun. Everybody likes some eye-grabbing, attention. So I thought that was really cool. and then just laying over, it's actually a background video, and then laying over it, I just put this text block in here. And then, you know, I added this section where, you know, maybe you have something like what to expect from joining the community. There's some placeholder text in here. This is actually, this section is set up a little bit differently. So you can say edit content, and that'll bring up, you know, the title. If you don't want it to have a title, you can turn that off. The button is this button down here. Whether, you know, maybe you have some information that you don't have an image for, so you can turn, you know, anything you want on and off. The content, clicking on that, that's where that's going to come into play. I'm going to just show you too. This is where the button is. And then this is where you change the title and description in there. Again, you can also change the design. So maybe you have only 2 items, or maybe you have 4. So one thing I wanted to show you in here where, like, if you had 4, if I change this to say max column 4, but I don't have a 4th item, it shoots everything over. So you'll want to make sure that kind of matches whatever makes sense to you. Like if you have 6 items, you probably want to keep it on 3, because then it'll just make a separate line. If you don't like how much space is in between here, you know, you can always come in here to style and size and space and, you know, play around with that. If you, like right now, the space between items is set to large, but if we set it to medium, you know, that's what happens. Let's set it to medium. That actually looks good. All right. Okay, then I just added another fun section here. Again, you can change the shapes of these. You can move text around, move images around. You can make it whatever you want. You can even make these clickable images. You can put text underneath here. And actually I have another section later on that does have more buttons. But you know, you can make it, customize it however you want. I added another fun scrolling text in here. We have some testimonials. When you're not in edit mode, like you can see there's a black border that comes around here, but when you're in edit mode, for some reason, it's not picking up. But all you have to do, let's hit save. We're gonna exit this. So as long as you're not in edit mode, you can see that sometimes now the CSS, you can see the border coming to life here. Okay, so let's get social. This is going to be your Instagram feed if you have one. There's a couple different ways you can do this. You can actually connect your actual Instagram feed to this, so that way it's getting live updates. I don't know if I suggest that you do that though, because anytime your password changes for Instagram, that means this section in the template is going to break completely. So I've added static images in here. Obviously, the more images you add, the more it's just going to keep scrolling in one direction. I only have a handful of images, so you're going to see it kind of go back and forth. But the more static images you add in here, the more it's, you know, going to go in one direction. And I do suggest you do just add the static images. Like I said, that way you don't have to ever worry about re-authenticating through Instagram. This will never break. You're going to have your best images in here. You get to pick and choose, not just, you know, maybe you had a bad week of your Instagram posts weren't the most creative or the best ones that you want to display on your website. So that's something to keep in mind. Let's go back into edit mode so I can show you. This is actually, if you have a blog, I've connected the blog here. So you can see when I highlight here, this like summary section. So I'm going to click into that, click edit. Content, it's going to say select a page. So right now it's just the blog, but if you have maybe a couple blogs, or you could actually make this your workshop. So this is the store. You can see by this icon here that this is actually going to be your store. in this template, apparently I'm selling workshops, but you can sell whatever you want and call it whatever you want. But if you connect the blog, that's going to show up there. You can change what data is shown here as well. Design. So maybe, I have this set for 5 images, but again, there's so many different things that you can change here. Again, you can change the layout. If you don't want it to be a grid, you can change it to any of these other ones, but I will want to say, be careful when you do that, because I think I set the border that you see around here only for the grid items. So if you go around and start changing too many items, it might not work that way. You're not gonna get the border. Then in the footer, I have this fun animation that's done by CSS. So you're gonna get this PNG as well in case you need to use it other places. If you're able to create a PNG on your own, then that way, you can do that in Canva, but you have to have a transparent background. So I think the only way to do a transparent background is if you have a pro account. I use Photoshop though, so if you have another program that can take the background out, just make sure it's transparent, curve the text, and then I'll show you in the custom CSS section of exactly how to make that change. And then this is a newsletter. More footer down here. I'm actually going to go in here and say edit footer. So it looks like 2 sections because I put a line down here, as you can see, but it's actually one big footer, and I did that just so this, stay in the loop shows up on every single page. But hey, if you don't want this on every single page, again, you can customize this however you want. Go ahead and delete, add, whatever. Again, since the spinning thing is in the custom CSS, you can't click on it and delete it. You'll have to click on it, or you'll have to find it in the CSS and do that. Again, don't be scared of CSS if you've never touched it. It's not going to be hard. Let's go ahead and exit out of here. Then let's go ahead and go into the store. I've set up, a few items in here. You can set them up however you want. Again, with this format, so if you edit the format, the way it's displayed in here, you might not get the border around each item. So I did try to keep this template, from a design perspective as streamlined as possible, but there are certain the way things are displayed will have to stay the same. So you don't want to necessarily go through and start changing things, but I just wanted to show you can add a product. When you do that, you can choose physical, digital download, membership. Again, the membership is going to require something a little bit special. So if you select on that, you want to make sure that you sign up for the correct Squarespace plan. If you want to put your scheduling in here, there's all sorts of different things that you can do. You can also, once you've already set one up, if you click on the ellipsis, you can always edit it if maybe you're not ready. Let's see, you have product name, you're going to have the description, additional info enabled. So once they click into your product, you're going to see all of this additional info. When you click in here, you can see, you can add and delete more things as well, but you can see what it looks like. Super easy to do. You can add more images. So if you want more images, that's really neat. You can set your price, if it's on sale, if there's limited stock. There's different variants, so maybe you have a physical product that comes in small, medium, and large. You can do that. Categories and tags. Public, maybe you're setting this up, but you're not ready to have it visible yet. You can set it to hidden. Maybe you're offering something for a very specific time. Maybe it's like, oh, come here on September 1st or whatever at a very specific time, and that's when it's going to go live. So you can schedule that. You can enable product reviews on your site or showcase related products. There's so much to do. I want to talk about this again. Anytime you see, you're going through here and you see the marketing section, SEO, make sure to pay attention to that, because as you can see, the default URL when I created this is some wonky thing. You don't have to worry about this part. This is going to be your domain, so you don't have to worry about that. /workshops, that's going to be whatever your store name is called. So maybe it's just called store. It could be whatever called that you want. But the end here is what you want to make sure you're going in and editing, because Squarespace just puts some gook in here. So you want to edit. You want to make sure that it says whatever it is that you're selling. So I think in this case, I'm selling a workshop called Let's Do Amazing Things. So, you should probably go in there and call this Amazing Things. Maybe not Let's Do Amazing Things, because that's kind of too long of a URL. Keep it short and sweet, maybe 1 or 2 words. But yeah, so you want to pay attention to that. Again, you'll want to pay attention to social share, because if people are sharing out this workshop, you want that to say whatever it is that you want it to say. You don't want it to be either empty or generic. So customize the button that's in there. So I've chosen a label that says sign me up, but you can do that. I think by default it says add to cart, which is fine too. So yeah, and then you can customize more of the checkout. I'm going to go ahead and just cancel out of here. Oh, one more thing I wanted to show you. Let's go back in here. If you've set up one of your products and all of your products are the same for the most part, obviously you're going to have to make changes with images, but the way you have certain items structured, you can come in here and open one and then duplicate it. So then when you go into the next one, you'll have to it's a little bit easier that way. You can, but I don't know. It's really up to you. It depends on what it is that you're selling, but I just wanted to point out that feature. Let's see. Okay, let's go into join. This is just a page that's in the main navigation. So this isn't yet under the member login or anything like that. So we can click in here. You can see communities kind of being wrapped around here. So you'll need to play around with your words. I'll need to go back in here and make sure that things aren't wrapped around. And honestly, it's probably only wrapped around on certain screens. So that's, as you expand it, you can see I'm kind of expanding my screen. It starts to change with me. So you'll have to play around with that. There's a fun video. Oh, here we've added accordions. So you can come in here and edit. It just brings up this content. So again, it's going to show you, the title, the description. You can always, again, duplicate it if you need to. So it's kind of fun. You can change the design. So maybe you don't like the title to be a heading 4. Maybe you want that to be a heading 2. It's going to be way too big though. But, so it's up to you. Change the alignment. When they come here, if you want the first item to automatically be expanded, you can do that. But yeah, there's so much you can do to make this your own. Let's get out of here. I don't want to save. Yeah. The about, I'm not going to go through each page because every page is essentially the same of how you make updates when you, click on it to edit. The blog I'll show you. So again, the blog with the custom border that's around it, it's going to be this layout. So if we go into edit section, it's under the basic grid blog. So if you change it to one of these other formats, that border is going to go away. So the border really only makes sense when it's in a grid. So be careful of that. I mean, that's totally fine if you want to change it. I just wanted you to be aware that it is gonna break the structure of that. But then you can go in here, you know, settings. This is another area where you're gonna want to, this is gonna be, you know, your blog excerpt. You want to change your post URL, so you probably don't want it to say, you know, blog post title 1. You want it to say the actual title of your blog post. You don't want it to have these extra characters that Squarespace automatically adds. Again, SEO, make sure that you're filling this out if you want to be searchable, which everybody does, right? I mean, that's what the point of all of this is. Like, you want to be found on Google, so make sure that you're paying extra special attention to all of the SEO on there. All right, so now the fun thing here is the member area. So this is what's super special. Let me see, since I'm in the configuration, you know, if I click on community login, it's just going to take me to this community exclusives page, but in real life, you would have to join or log in somehow. So this members area, you can see this lock in here. So anything that's under here, I've called it community. You can call it whatever you want. You can change the name when you click on that, you know, maybe it's just members only area, but this is where you're going to edit all of that and even update the pricing. Right now I just have it set to free, but you can make it a one-time fixed amount. You can set up a subscription. And then again, any pages that you put under here are going to be underneath that login. I'm going to show you what it looks like though when you go to add a member area to begin with. So if you're not ready to publish an upgrade right now, you can just say, if you say select plans, it's going to show you the plans that you have to have in order to support the member area. But if you just say not now because you're just playing around with it, you can still set one up, you know? So you can set up a new member area. This is what it's going to look like to for your pricing structure. So that can be done there. And then once you do that, that's when you're going to see this area, again, which I've called community setup. And then I've made a community exclusives page. So this is the only page I have set up in here, but again, you can add multiple pages. One thing I wanted to know is that when you are in the member area, notice that the navigation changes. So the main navigation goes away. You can always get back to the home screen by clicking on your logo over here, you know, which is pretty standard. Everybody knows to do that. But your navigation is now only going to show the one community and the one page. So when you click on this, it's going to be a drop down. So now we have community exclusives down here. You know, and then again, the way you edit things is just completely the same. So I'm not going to go into detail. Make sure if you have links, because these are buttons, so make sure your links are doing what you want it to do. And one last tidbit. Let's go into edit. I should have said this in the beginning. If you want to edit this section, you can always, you know, maybe you're like too afraid to edit it at first. You can always duplicate a section and then work from the copy. And that way, if you don't like your changes, you're like, oh my gosh, I just want to go back to the beginning, just delete the section. That works too. You can also save a section. So maybe you're like, I really like the way this section looks, but I want it to be on a different page. So I hit the star to save it. I'm now going to come out. Let's go to a different page. Let's just go back to the home page. We're going to click edit. Again, you don't want to make the changes here on this top section on the home page because this is very custom CSS to make this happen. But if we go down and say add section, this is going to pop up. And now you can, you know, add whatever section you want. You can see this whole menu in here. It's pretty cool. You can also click on saved sections. And so now I want to double click on my saved section. So now I'm going to put this section in here, and now I can make edits. Again, I think that's a really neat feature of this, so that way you can move stuff around more easily. But we're just going to go ahead and remove that. All right, so that's pretty much it. I mean, like I said, there's going to be a separate section for the custom CSS. If you don't want to touch the CSS, don't. But for those of you who aren't afraid of it, or you have someone helping you, or you already know CSS, feel free to stick around for that. But yeah, I mean, I'm really excited for you guys. I think this is a really neat template. I love it. I had a lot of fun making this, so I hope you enjoy. Thanks. So this is assuming you've purchased the template and now you want to go through the custom CSS to make changes. So again, if you're not comfortable with making changes to CSS, don't do it, or ask for help from one of your friends, or, start Googling things. I'll be able to help you a little bit, but by this point, I will have transferred the template over to you, so I won't be able to see any changes that you've made, so tread carefully there. So I've set up some variables. You don't have to use variables if you don't want to, but I just find it easier that way. If you don't like the font in here, and you don't like any of the ones that come with Squarespace, and you want to change it, I'm going to show you. Let's pretend, this doesn't exist. So you're going to set up your @font face, manage custom files. You're going to upload whatever your font file is, and then make sure you're going to want to make sure your cursor is in between the parentheses, and when you're in here, select your file, and it automatically pastes the URL in there. So again, I know that might sound like a lot. So this tutorial is going to be for somebody who's not too afraid to go in here and make these changes. Then this next section is just showing you, what elements in the HTML is getting that font family. It's basically all of the headings, and then I've grabbed a couple other items in here that made sense to me. One thing I wanted to point out is in my CSS, I try really hard to document. So each different section is going to have these, big headings in front of it. For those of you who don't know, this is how you make a comment in here with the asterisks and the backslash. So make sure, if you don't know CSS and you're changing things, like taking the slash out could possibly break everything. So you need to be real careful. Every single character counts when it comes to code, including CSS. This right here is grabbing the header. So that's what's this is what's putting the border around this header. If you want to add more padding, you can do that. You can see that the border is actually grabbing the variable border. You use variables in case you don't know, because if you want to have something consistent throughout the site. So I'm going to be using that border variable several times, but if you want all of your borders to increase, I'm going to do something crazy just to show you an example. Instead of 2 pixels, maybe you want it to be 12. Then everything gets the 12 pixels. And you want it to be consistent, so that's why I find it easier to use variables. Again, you don't have to, but if you're gonna change something, maybe you want to increase it just to 3, you only increase it in one place inside the variable instead of in each and every item that we have here. This right here is the floating button. So that's the community login. Again, this button is actually when you go in to edit the site header, which I showed you in an earlier video. So when you're in edit mode and you're editing the site header, there's a place for a button. That's what this button actually is. But this code right here, the CSS, is what's pushing it down and making it hover. Or floating. We've called it floating. So it floats a little bit, so that's kind of fun. Folder drop-down menu. Here, let me see. That's actually going to come into play anytime you have a drop-down menu. I don't have it in the main navigation. You're only going to see the drop-down menu here on the community exclusives site. But if you happen to have, even on the in the main navigation, if you end up with folders, you know, which you could do, it'll have the same style. A lot of it's pretty self-explanatory of what it is, especially if you've used CSS before. Section borders, that's these. I mean, you can set borders with each section within the CSS, but I find it easier that way. I find it easier to do it in the CSS, so it's a little bit more standard. I want to say too that since I'm in the config, you know, whenever you're in the config, sometimes you can see the star is on top of the text, but don't worry, because once you're outside of that, let's get out of the config. No, actually here. Well, you know what's going to be easier is I'm going to bring up Firefox. And when you're out of the config, that way I'm in a different browser and I'm not signed in. When you're out of the config, you can see that it works right. So don't let that scare you. Okay, the top background image, so this right here, this is very specific to this section of this template. So it has to grab this section ID. You can see that it's pushing it to the side. That's the 33% width. And it's also giving it a border. So if you want it to be half the screen, change it to 50%. If you want it to be, you know, 5% of the screen, that would be really weird, but you can do that. We're going to keep it at 33. Again, this section ID is very specific to this section alone. So if you go in here and delete this section and then try to re-add it back, it will not work, because every time you add a section to Squarespace, the ID changes. So actually the ID that you see right here in this video is going to be different than the template that you get, because when I copy this over and give it to you, I'm going to have to go in here and change the ID. And if you're brave enough, there is a Google extension. I'm going to show you. There's a Chrome extension called Squarespace ID Finder. So when you install that and enable it, you click on that, you can see all of these ID finders pop up. So this is the section ID that we're looking at here. This is the block ID for just this block, you know. So, but you'll want to copy that and paste the whole thing in here if you need to change this, or if you accidentally delete it and need to come back and find that again. So that's kind of a neat way to do that. Spinner. Okay, let me take this off. Take that off. Okay, the spinner is referring to, at the bottom here, stay in the loop. So this is your rotation, you know, that's what's making it happen. The section ID, again, that's very specific. So you're going to have to, if you change this, you know, I'm going to set this up for the template that I send to you, but if you decide to change this, it's very important that you get that Chrome extension, find the section ID, Squarespace ID Finder, you know, grab that section ID and put that back in here. If, again, it's only if you happen to delete this section and try to add a new one, or if you want to add this spinning thing maybe in a different section that's not in the footer, you can do that. Just know that you have to have the correct selector for that section. And the way you change the image is right here. So this is the image. Like when you're in edit mode, you can't grab this image. It's not an image block. It's being set as a background image, as you can see here. So you're going to get the stay in the loop, you know, image that's in there, but if you want to change it, that's just how you do it. It's, you know, you'll want to, if you add a different one, you'll just want to add your image to the asset library, you know, upload it, and then you'll be able to grab the URL from that. You know, you'll get this images.squarespace CDN URL, and it'll be all different and all this garbly goop at the bottom. So you'll just need to add that in there. You know, and then there's some more, this right here, whenever you see like at media screen, max width. So this is saying there's certain things that you might want to view on mobile, but not on desktop, or you just want it to look a little bit different. So that's what that is. And then the rest will be pretty self-explanatory. This is just talking about anytime we see like gallery images, this is the border that we're putting on there. We also have a border radius. I had to do kind of a slightly different border radius for the images on some of them, just so you know. I forget off the top of my head what my border radius is up here. Border radius is 18, but the image border radius, I've taken 3 pixels off, so it's really just going to be, you know, 15, because I noticed that when I was not just doing the content itself, the whole content, the image wasn't taking the border radius, so I had to grab the image itself to put the border radius on. And I needed to adjust the radius slightly so it fit in there quite nicely. So let's go back to where we were. I mean, this is really just doing the same thing. There's a lot of items in here that I put the border radius on, so that's why, again, what I said in the previous video, that, you know, you don't want to necessarily change the structure when you're in the, for example, when you're in the blog post, like it's set to grid. I think it's called simple grid. So you don't want to change that if you want to keep the border on there, you know, but you can do it however you want, you know. This is actually, oh, this down here. So that was just talking more about the floating button. This down here is the autoplay gallery reel. Sorry, that's this part right here. So that's your fake Instagram feed, or, you know, it doesn't even have to be associated to Instagram. It could be whatever you want. But this is what's making this go back and forth. For your store, I've added some custom CSS. So we see the border on your store items. And then the footer, the H1, let me get rid of these. I've changed the font size, so it's, if you know, you can always take that out. It makes it really big. I don't think it needs to be that big, so that's why I've toned that down a little bit. The newsletter sign up, that's just right here. Get exclusive content. I don't like the way it looks when you originally add the newsletter in there. It has like a, when you, by default, when you add this, Squarespace has this, you know, like white box that says, actually, I think that's this right here. Yeah, so it has like a white box. I've just totally redone this, and the border, yeah, it has all of this around the top. You can see how everything's starting to change when you take the code out. But anyway, I mean, that's pretty much it. Again, if you have any questions, if you get stuck, feel free to reach out to me, but it should be pretty easy to follow if you've worked with CSS before. All right, thanks.